Kalalau Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak, Wadash, and double honors to the elders of GMS Ruel, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah. Today's lesson: Russia will never trust Western partners. And here I have an RT.com article that says, Russia will never blindly trust Western partners again. And this comes to you by Vladimir Putin himself. The president has stated that Moscow will no longer tolerate diplomatic deception. President Vladimir Putin has emphasized that Moscow's trust in Western Europe has been fundamentally broken, stating that while Russia remains open to working with the EU to resolve the Ukraine conflict, it will no longer do so on the basis of trust. That's out the window. And when it comes to biblical scripture, it has said to never trust thine enemy. And what's happening with Russia and the West is just prophecy playing out for that final nuclear showdown between Russia and America. Even the 10 horns shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. And according to prophecy, their own allies are going to shoot missiles at America, making her desolate and naked. That's found upon the scripture of Revelation 17 and 16. And it's all about the will of the Lord, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. The Russian bear is going through many obstacles because it has to fulfill prophecy and return to that old Soviet Union mentality. With that being said, let's go over to the scripture of Sirach 12 and 10. Here we have that scripture of Ecclesiasticus of Sirach 12 and 10. Never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Meaning that the wickedness of Edom, the so-called white race, is just as destructive as rust upon iron. So in other words, his destructive ways of deception is compared to rust upon iron when oxidized, you see? And when it comes to their destructive ways of deception, the hopeful elect of the Lord are not ignorant. With that being said, let's go over to 2 Corinthians 2 and 11. 2 Corinthians 2 and 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Right. And Satan means adversary and refers to Edom being the wicked in the flesh, according to Malachi 1 and 4. For we are not ignorant of his devices represents the hopeful elect of the Lord, knowing of Edom's plans of wickedness, whether it's through their theological cemetery lies in which they push, or by the deceptive medical juice they give unto the people. We are not ignorant to their many destructive devices, and we are neither ignorant to the GMO foods in which they sell, in which they push. In other words, the hopeful elect are not ignorant to Edom's devices to destroy the children of Israel, which consists of so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, who are the 12 tribes of Israel. Because what they do is they practice their evil upon their beds. Second Thessalonians 2 and 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. A falling away first occurred in the time of 70 AD. To be deceived also means to be beguiled. The woman was the one to be deceived in the garden by Edom. The son of perdition happened more than 2,000 years ago, and refers to Judas Iscariot, according to John 17 and 12. But the term the son of perdition also applies to Edom as a nation of people. But it's just as the scripture has said, let no man deceive you by any means. You see? And the Edomite serpent that was in the garden was wickedly crafty and a sly fellow, in which the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua had made. Here we have that scripture 1 John 3 and 7, which says, little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. He that doeth righteousness obeys the scriptures. And the scripture of Hebrews 13 and 7 has said to obey them that have the rule over you. Right. And our job is to give you the absolute truth. And not to have continuous, endless debates. But the Apostle Paul also said to let them be ignorant. But even though he humbled himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him, because in his mind he is set to do evil. Esau Edom. And Esau Edom continues to be revealed more and more throughout the world World Wide Web. Just look at these articles in which they themselves post online. This is the reason why the scriptures have said, so they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. You see? Here we have that scripture of Psalm 64 and 8. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. And surely their tongues are falling upon themselves by the truth in which they say and post. That's why Russia said that it will no longer tolerate diplomatic deception. And that Russia will never blindly trust Western partners again. Right, because they say one thing and do the total opposite. And when it comes to Edom, they're always sabotaging themselves anyway, as in the case of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Now what you're seeing is Edom versus Edom. But one thing is for certain, the men of the Lord, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, are not deceived by their devices. And really what these negotiations were about were negotiations of deception. There's also another scripture in Psalms 55 and 21 that speaks about his words were smoother than butter. Here we have Psalms 55 and 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Right, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. Right. They get you with those fancy words of deception, of deceit. But his true motive was one of war. Everything about Edom's ways of life is based upon treachery and trickery. Words of deception, negotiations of deception. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Right, because his words were pleasant words of deception and one of betrayal, as in the case of this RT.com article. And when it comes to deception, that has always been an act or statement that misleads, hides the truth, or promotes a belief, concept, or idea that is not true. And that always starts with the words in which they speak. And when it comes to this article, you can clearly feel the double dealing by the things they say, of the deception. And if we can see the web of deception that is being spun, the Russians see it too. That's why Vladimir Putin said what he said. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawing swords. Right, drawing swords to draw them into a trap of weakening. The Russians will not be weakened. And the nation of Edom does this with everyone, even their very own race. That's the reason why every nation is angry and constantly on their backs. They cannot be trusted. But one thing is for certain, the men of the Lord are not deceived by their devices. Pursuant to that scripture of 2 Corinthians 2:11, they are being revealed and exposed. Every time an article like this comes out, then another one comes out, then another one comes out, hey, something clicks upon your mind. They cannot be trusted. And the Russians see right through your web of deceptions. But this is all part of prophecy for that final showdown of Armageddon, or of Armageddon. But with that being said, Kalalam Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai Bahashem Rachakwadash, and double honors to the elders of GMS Ruwell. Blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah.